Earlier today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters that the House will consider early next week a Senate-passed bill to enhance security for Supreme Court justices and their families. The announcement was made after House Democrats again denied a request by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy that the chamber approve by unanimous consent the legislation that the Senate passed a month ago by unanimous consent. Now, of course, I would think they would want to hurry and pass this, given the fact that we've had the arrest of a would-be assassin outside the home of Justice Kavanaugh, and the inflamed rhetoric that have come from Democratic leaders. Now, this has been a year or so ago, actually about 2 years ago, but it was during the confirmation, after the confirmation process of Brett Kavanaugh. And here again is the leader of the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer. Listen to what he had to say.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
And that was Chuck Schumer, who is the leader of the United States Senate. And so you have crazies that act on this rhetoric, this inflamed rhetoric by leaders, the leader of the United States Senate. Joining me now to talk about this and more is Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa. He is the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Always glad to be with you, Tony. Thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing up this very important issue.
Well, I want to talk about this, Senator, because I think it's extremely important that we have this, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment, the president even going on Jimmy Kimmel last night saying that this could lead to a mini revolution if the court overturns Roe v. Wade. That's certainly not lowering the temperature. I would think they would be rushing to provide this extra security for the Supreme Court justices.
The president has a bully pulpit, and he ought to be trying to bring some civility to a nation that has too much incivility. And you're absolutely right. I made this statement on a Twitter yesterday condemning Schumer. I spoke about it today in the Judiciary Committee. We're in a position where this sort of slow walking this bill through the U.S. House of Representatives, considering the fact that we passed it more than a month ago in the United States Senate, is ridiculous. That bill could have been on the president's desk this very day. There's just no excuse for it. Everybody ought to be outraged.
Right. It's usually the Senate that moves slow. That's where bills usually go and get hung up, not the House. The House can move very rapidly. I want to move on, Senator, to something I know you're concerned about, and that is, protecting our schools, protecting our children, because you've put forth initiatives to do that. I want to ask you first, though, these bipartisan discussions that are taking place in the Senate to address the growing threat of violence in our country, how are those going?
Well, I'm not a member of that group. I could be a member of it, but it started with a couple people that the two leaders put together to get it started. It may be growing a little bit. We've had very positive comments coming out of it, and things that lead to more making sure that people that can handle guns handle them. Some of that would be maybe some background checks. Some of it may be dealing with school safety, things of that nature. I've got a bill that I'm promoting along that line, and I think we need to do everything we can to make sure that this sort of violence is just not permitted, and it's outrageous that we would have this sort of violence. And again, that's kind of an extension of what we've been talking about, the attempt to assassinate Kavanaugh, but it carries over, the same principle carries over to the schools. This sort of violence cannot be tolerated.
Well, and let's talk about your bill for a moment, because your bill not only focuses on schools, it focuses on houses of worship, businesses, restaurants. I mean, it even focuses on the city streets. I mean, it is truly about trying to address the issue of violence. Tell us about it.
Well, I call it the Eagle Bill because it's named after the mascot of the Parkland, Florida high school, where it's in 2018, where there was violence used and deaths caused. I talked to the parents at that time to draw up the bill, and I had a parent in my office within the last month saying, how can they help move that bill? It's kind of a non-controversial bill. At least it should be. There's one or two senators holding it up. I don't want to name those senators, but I don't think they have a good reason for doing it. And it ought to pass separate from the discussions that are going on, but it could also be a part of that. And what it does is it builds on a program that the Secret Service has had for the last 20 some years. And and they're very good at training people to recognize people that can be troublesome or danger to society as a whole, and it brings it into the schools and the churches and other places so we can identify these people and intervene so we don't have the problems that we have.
So it's more of a very isolated surgical approach to dealing with the problem and not treating everyone like a criminal and taking away their Second Amendment rights, which is being proposed by the Democrats.
Yes, I think that we're going to be fortunate enough, at least up till now, that if we get an agreement, that Democrats are not asking well, some Democrats are, but I hope the Democrats that are negotiating with the Republicans on this issue of a package for school safety and gun responsibility, that they aren't talking about doing away with the whole class of guns, because that would be violating the First Amendment, or I mean the Second Amendment. And do you realize that just recently in California, there was a court case that said that it was a violation of the Second Amendment when they said people under 21 years of age could buy a gun.
They seem to see the Constitution as an obstacle rather than a guidepost. Senator, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for coming on, Senator Grassley. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to be with you, Tony, anytime.